We are seeing a wave of labor action across the country in the midst of this pandemic. Yesterday, workers for the grocery delivery app Instacart held a one-day strike demanding hazard pay and access to protective equipment. Today, employees from the grocer Whole Foods did a sick-out. We've also seen labor action by sanitation workers who walked off the job demanding protective equipment and hazard pay as well. And at Amazon, which has seen its sales soar, not surprisingly, is now hiring 100,000 new warehouse and delivery people. As a result, workers across the country have said the conditions inside the warehouses are unsafe.
Hello, this is Failed State Update, Episode 2, and I am Joseph L. Flatley, a.k.a. Lenny. That's what my family and friends call me. It is true that we have an economic crisis being created by everybody losing their jobs, and it's also clear that we have a medical crisis caused by this disease we have no immunity to. But more importantly, we have a political crisis. There's no reason that we couldn't started bracing for this, started preparing a response to the COVID-19 in February of this year, instead of waiting months and wasting valuable time. And there's no reason that Jeff Bezos can't just pay his taxes and the government can't just give everybody a paycheck to wait this thing out. Food, medicine, medical care, all that is within our reach as a country. There's no way we couldn't do it if we really wanted to. So for this episode number 2 of the Failed State Update, we're going to begin by talking to Chris Smalls, the former Amazon employee and current organizer who is really at the forefront of this fight to protect the lives of working people and the communities that they support. I've worked off and on for Amazon for a couple years, and it was a good job. It wasn't my main job. But when I saw this coming, I was actually supposed to go back into the sortation facility in March. And when I saw this coming, I just felt like, Amazon is not going to take care of people. I didn't know. I didn't have proof, but I just felt, there's no way I could do my job in social distance.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
So I'm very curious just to hear your story and kind of how you ended up becoming kind of the leader of this movement.
Man, how? Well, in the beginning of March, that's when I noticed some of my employees, my colleagues around me, they began to fall ill. They were flu-like symptoms. They were called out of work because they were dizzy. They were fatigued. Some of my employees were vomiting at their workstations. Some of them couldn't finish their 10-hour work shift. And it was very alarming. We had no facial masks. We had no PPE provided as far as the gloves that we need to protect our hands, our skin. There were no cleaning supplies. It was very scarce in the building as far as cleaning supplies. And at the time, it was still business as usual. We were still throwing parties, not social distancing. We had a party with a DJ, popcorn machine, candy, you name it, we had it there. This was the middle of March. This pandemic was very much in the States already, and I was very concerned. So that's when I started to raise my concerns to the higher-ups, and they were very nonchalant about it. They swept me under the rug. They, was like, business as usual because at the time we didn't have any confirmed cases. So, yeah, that's what forced me to take further action. I sat in the building. I came to the building after sending home my colleague who tested positive. I sat in the building for 8 hours a day off the clock, telling the employees the truth, that they possibly been exposed to somebody who tested positive. And I was talking about my colleague and other employees that management had told us not to tell the employees. And I wasn't in agreement and alliance with that. So, on March 30th, that's when I held the walkout that resulted to my termination.
So you were going into work every day, not clocking in, but just hanging out in the break room or whatever and informing your fellow workers what was happening.
Yep, absolutely. I sat in the break room every single day from 7 o'clock to about 4:30 in the afternoon every day, um, mobilizing, not mobilizing, but you could say having an open dialogue with the employees, telling them the truth, actually marching them into the general manager's office every morning at 9 o'clock to voice our concerns to get the building closed down. We did that every single day that week. And then on Saturday, I guess they got tired of me doing it. They decided to quarantine me. That was the last day of the week for us. And they already knew that not only was I exposed, but all the employees in my department was exposed. And they only decided to quarantine me, not even the person that I ride to work with every single day.
Were people getting sick and not getting diagnosed because of the lack of testing?
Absolutely. There's a number of ways they were getting people. Number one, we could all be asymptomatic. There's a lot of young adults that work there. Number two, good luck trying to get a test in the state of New York right now. It's the Epic Center. We got to think about that. New York, New Jersey is the Epic Center. It's very hard to even get a test. And number three, their policy for Amazon is you don't get officially quarantined until they receive physical documentation from the doctors, which can take a number of days or weeks. So all this time going by, you're possibly working hand in hand or next to somebody or running into somebody who possibly is carrying the virus. So it just doesn't make any sense to me why any building that has a case will remain open, because you can't stop the spread once it's inside these type of buildings.
How was Amazon's business? Did you notice like an uptick in sales or more packages coming through? Or
no, I mean, I didn't notice. Actually, I noticed the complete opposite. So facility centers that we work in are not the Amazon grocery distribution centers. It's not the Amazon Fresh. They might be seeing more work than we do. We don't sell as much essential items that people think that we do at fulfillment centers. We just don't. It doesn't carry any type of cold or refrigerated products. It only has really canned food, dry foods, and the rest would be like, candy or junk food or anything like that. It doesn't have all the necessary things that you would go to your local grocery store for. It doesn't have that. We sell more electronics and small items, and obviously sex toys. That's what Amazon makes its money off of. It ain't no secret about that. That's what we still sell till this day. They didn't narrow down the inventory to make it just essential items. They didn't do none of that. They're still making it. The reason why they're making a killing is because they're selling what they want to sell. That's why Jeff Bezos is making all these billions of dollars, because he's selling what he want to sell. They're still selling the Amazon-owned products, which is the Fire Sticks, the Echoes, and all of that stuff. So, yeah, this company lies about a lot of things, and they sugarcoat everything. But us employees, we know the truth. We know the reality of the situation.
Yeah, so tell me about the walkout. What date was that?
March 30th.
March 30th. And you had been sent home. They had said that since you had been exposed to someone with coronavirus, that you were supposed to be quarantined. Were anybody else who had been exposed to that employee quarantined?
No, absolutely not. They quarantined me on Saturday, the last day, 2 days before March 30th, because, like I said, I've been there the entire week. They knew about it. They knew I was there. The day that she tested, her results came back in, she texted me. We're friends. I told them myself that I was exposed to her for 5 minutes. But they told me, they'll let you know when you're going to be quarantined. I was like, well, I'm telling you right now that I need to be quarantined. But they told me, no, don't worry about it. We'll give you a call. I said, okay, that makes sense, but it really didn't make sense to me. They didn't tell none of the employees that was around her for 10 hours a day for multiple days in a row. And like I said, they didn't even quarantine the person I ride to work with every single day. So what did I tell everybody? They just wanted me to be quarantined to silence me.
And what were the demands of the walkout?
To have the building closed down and sanitized. That's all we wanted. The building in Queens, New York did it. That's what Staten Island wanted, the same thing. Queens, New York, they had one case. They closed down the building. They sanitized it. Everybody came back to work the next day. We wanted the same exact thing. They refused.
Why were you guys not getting closed down?
Because they claimed that the associate that tested positive wasn't on the premises at the time. Didn't make sense to me. I'm like, so what? He was here. He possibly could spread it to other associates, which he did, unfortunately. But yeah, it didn't make sense to me. They said that he wasn't on the premises at the time when they got the results back in. And the difference is Queens, New York, the person was on the premises when they got the results.
Now we know, and I think we knew then, that if you get sick or, if you test positive, you've probably been walking around. You could have been walking around for a week getting everybody else sick. Right,
yeah, we all know that. We know the common sense behind it, but apparently the company doesn't get it. They have their own. I don't know who the heck these people are, but they apparently they have some medical expertise that we don't, because I told them the same thing. Like, we don't know how long this person had it. We don't know where he got it from, but you're telling me there's no reason to close down the building. That doesn't make sense to me. Now they have, abundance of cases. They have over 50, 60 cases in that building because you can't stop the spread. When I started raising concerns, it was only about 2 or 3 cases. Now you're talking about 50, 60 cases in there. And this has only been a matter of a month, not even less than a month.
So that's a pretty big, 50, 60 cases. That has the potential to really spread very quickly.
It's already have, and it's probably more than that. These are just the cases that we know of. The company lying about that as well. They already said it on CNN the other day with Jay Carney. He said he doesn't have the number, but that's just a bunch of lies because this company has ran nothing. Amazon is ran strictly off of metrics. Everything they do is ran off of numbers. Everything. They have the numbers. They know how many people are affected in their network, but they're not going to release it because it's so high that it will be shocking to the world if they actually release how many people are infected. And I know that. They know that. But, their day is coming.
Alex Chalakian, founder, CEO of Lake Avenue Financial. What are your thoughts, Alex, here on what was just a darling, and that is Amazon? And they hired 175,000 people? I don't know. What are they up to these days?
Well, as you just pointed out, Nicole, Amazon is one of the only companies that is hiring right now. I'm anticipating some great earnings coming out from them. They've been hitting on all cylinders. And as we spoke about this last month, this coronavirus has done nothing but help with the Amazonification of the world. People are ordering their supplies, ordering their goods, ordering whatever they possibly can through Amazon to feel safer, not have to leave the house. And it's definitely helped with that. So we're excited to see what's going on with Amazon, and we just continue to expect higher and higher earnings here.
So it's a 2409, Alex. Do you think this stock is heading higher in 6 months, 12 months?
And then, speaking of the numbers, the metrics, I noticed that the first time, my first shift in the sort center, it was like you couldn't even pick up a box without somebody coming down and telling you, you popped up on our computer, you're not walking fast enough or something.
Right.
It's absurd to me that they wouldn't be able to crunch the numbers and figure this out. And then the news just came out recently about how they're using heat maps and metrics to determine which stores, which locations are in danger of unionizing.
Right. They have metrics for everything. So, that's the funny thing is you got metrics for everything, but you don't have metrics for how many cases you got in these buildings. It's bogus. And we all should just catch on, like Amazon is full of it. And the truth will come out. Whatever they do in the dark will come to the light, and it's starting to unravel now. I started a revolution, and we just had another walkout, 2 days ago, last night, I believe, in Minneapolis. So they have a lot of, explaining to do, and they should be held accountable.
And how many people walked out on March 30th?
About 50 to 60 people.
Okay. And then what was the management's response?
that it was only 15. You know, that's what their PR, they called every newspaper that, you know, released something different because, you know, they want to make sure that it's not bigger than what it was, but it absolutely was. People that the news outlets that were there can dispute that. The people that were there can dispute that. Even the simple fact that other buildings been walking out afterwards, you know, they sugarcoated them as well. You know, all they do is every time another protest happens, they're quick to jump the gun on PR. You know, that's what they do. They've been spending millions of dollars on PR and safety guidelines because of my actions. You know, it's no other way around it, and it shouldn't have happened that way. But that's just the reality of the situation.
So you were fired after you were let go after that, but they said it wasn't because you were organizing.
Right. They say that about everybody. They fired about 8 people since, and you're telling me that all 8 of us is insubordinate out of nowhere, right? No, it doesn't make sense. You know, somebody like the 2 young ladies that were fired in Seattle, they've been with the company 13 years. You telling me all of a sudden they want to be insubordinate? No, it's because we're putting our people in danger, and we're raising concerns. It wasn't because of, you know, they decided to violate internal policies. Like, we're doing it for a reason. You know, the reason is we're not protected and we're not safe. I've been with the company since 2015. I know the rules inside and out. Why would I purposely violate rules if I knew if I knew they were going to get me terminated? That wasn't the case. I did something because the company failed to protect us, and that's why, you know, I have no regrets about what I did.
What are you hearing from other people around the country, other activists that are trying to hold Amazon accountable?
Same thing. We all supportive of one another. You know, we communicate. I talk to them all the time. You know, people call, email me all the time, every day from all over the world. What I did was put Amazon on notice, and now the voices that were afraid to speak up are starting to speak up. And those that want to take action are starting to take action. And that's what we're going to continue to see until the company finally responds in a way that's suitable for their employees. Right now, it's still not. You know, all the stuff that they're putting out there, all the things they implemented, it's all reactive. It's not like they have done it for the entire time or duration of the pandemic. No, this all happened after they terminated me, which was March. I know we're already at the end of April, and the virus has already been around for a few months. So everybody that's already contracted the virus for this company is continue to spread it if they are continuing to go to work. Or, you know, the company has to realize that you can't stop the spread of this virus. You know, once you contract this virus and you go to work every day and you're possibly spreading it to your coworkers, it's not the building that holds the virus, it's now the people. You know, so the only way you can stop the spread is by shutting it down and separating the people. You have to keep everybody quarantined away from each other for at least a minimum of 2 weeks. And I would say even longer at this time because, like I said, just 3 weeks ago we had only a few cases. Now we're up to 70. Some of these buildings got 90 cases, 80 cases, and we have all the text messages. The company started sending out text messages after I exposed them on national TV about how they weren't being transparent about the number of cases. That same night is when they started to send out text messages, mass text messages to all the employees in bulks of how many cases these buildings got. Since then, it's been like every day we get a text, every single day, even today. 5:30 in the morning, we can give you the exact time. We get another text saying we have additional cases in the building. That is ridiculous, and that's scary to me. You know, that we're going to receive text messages every single day saying they don't even give out the number anymore. So what they do is, and originally they were giving out the number. They'd be like, hey, there's been 3 confirmed cases over the past weekend, da-da-da-da-da. Now they're just saying we have additional. They don't give out a number. So we caught on to it. We've been hip. And I have a team that's been put together to calculate and put everything on data, all the cases for all the buildings all across the Amazon network. So we will be releasing that sometime this week to give that. Yep. So Jay Carney will have his answer. Since he don't have it, I have it.
It's just insane to me that this business is still up and running when people are just getting, like you said, sex toys and Kindle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people have died. People have died already. We just had another death last night. Somebody died
At JFK.
A former employee at JFK. Yes.
So do you have a number of how many people have passed away?
It's been roughly about 4. I think I want to say about 4 or 5 people, and that's within Amazon and Whole Foods, which is owned by Amazon. There's been at least 4 or 5 deaths already related to COVID-19.
If people want to help out or spread the word, like, how should they get in touch?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, shut_down Amazon, or Instagram, Chris.Smalls_. I try to be very accessible. I have my email address up there as well. Just send me an email, and I will definitely get back to you. If not, somebody from my team will definitely get back to you. There's plenty of people that I have that I'm working with that'll forward, contact information to me if needed to. So, just continue to support whatever I post. Is really, I try to keep it updated day to day, hour by hour. I try to update it and keep in communication with people.
I've had a number of jobs over the years, all different kind of work environments, and it's really hard for people. I think it takes some courage or some leadership to stand up. Just the thought of going into work every day, not clocking in, and informing people of what's happening in opposition to what management would have you do. It takes some guts and real leadership, and thank you for that. I really applaud you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Absolutely.
I just got off the phone with Chris Smalls. It was pretty insane. What I didn't realize was that, one of his employees, he was a manager, one of his employees, or some sort of supervisor, one of his employees got sick. So every day he'd come in for his shift, he wouldn't clock in, and he would hang out in the break room and tell keep tabs on the situation and tell everybody what's going on. It's I'm like, how did that detail get lost in the coverage? Because that is crazy.
Yeah, I haven't heard that at all. So basically, he turned into a self-appointed hall monitor, and that's awesome.
And it's
an important detail, by the way, crucial.
Yeah. And when they ended up firing him, what they said is because they, so this woman that he sent home, they ended up saying, well, she has COVID-19, so you're going to have to quarantine yourself. But they didn't tell any of the people that she'd been working with, day in, day out. He spoke with her for 5 minutes, and they told him that, obviously to get rid of him, but they didn't tell anybody else. And then, so when he came back for the protest, they were like, yep, violating quarantine, you're fired. It's wow, that's evil corporation shit right there.
Well, and it's just a more justification for what's coming, which is the complete automation of their delivery system. So, it's human beings are getting in the way at this point. It's so. I feel for people who work for Amazon because it's kind of the only gig in town in a lot of places, and at least it's a steady income or had been. but they kind of have you over a barrel in this labor market. They have everybody over a barrel.
Oh, absolutely. I've been going off and on to like Uber and, even working in the Amazon sort center right by my house here just to like supplement my income. And it's crazy. Everything's a metric. It's like, it's obvious, first of all, that people are only working there because it's like the last things that they can't do with robots. Like, it's like no matter how they push so many packages through the chute that they have to have somebody standing there with a stick to like pry them loose if they get stuck. It's like, like that was my job once, just hanging out, staring at packages and then like poking them with a big stick.
So you're basically you're an industrial laxative.
Exactly. And it's like they're going to figure out, they're going to figure out that chute sooner or later, and I'm going to be out of a job. So.
Oh my God, you were in charge of keeping the Amazon poop chute going.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And it was like you'd be standing there and then you'd hear like a buzz and you'd have to like know which one of like, because you're like in the center and there's like all these different, there's like, I think there were like 8 different lines where people were taking packages and putting them on pallets to throw in the back of the truck to ship. So it's like all the trucks would pull in the one end, somebody would throw all the packages off the trucks into these conveyors, and then they would go to a central spot, and then they would be split into 8 different lanes or whatever, and then sent. So it was like people, super fast paced, like grabbing packages, looking at the letter on it, and then throwing it down the specific chute. And then I'd be standing there with a stick, and then like something would buzz, and somehow in all this chaos, I'd have to figure out which chute was the one that was stuck, and then I'd have to like run over there, and it was lame. But like what I did learn from that experience was that, I mean, Amazon is all about metrics, and like everything you do has a number. They know if you're like moving too slowly, if you're not carrying enough packages, and it was just so, it was like Brazil.
Do you wake from your finest fantasy only to return to your daily nightmare?
Mr. Watt! Yes, Mr. Watt! Until this all blows over, just stay away from me.
Brazil. It's only a state of mind.
We're all in it together, kid.
But just to think of all these facilities like all over the country, and they're all, disease vectors at this point.
Well, and also canaries in the coal mine, kind of showing the way forward for the next layer of surveillance capitalism, where we're being monitored, and all your behavioral surplus is actually their algorithmic, the metrics that feed their algorithm that maximize profits, because on the scale that they're operating on, if you can make up 10 cents on Lenny in one day, that's all part of the building the profit. So, because there are hundreds of thousands of Lennys in the system. So, the other interesting thing to me is that, you monitoring the poop chute with a stick just goes to show, in a way, it's sort of a reverse proposition standing on its head, how automation really is key, because the only reason why that's not being automated right now, because they could put a sensor in the chute and they could come up with easily a mechanical device that could unclog it, right? I mean, it's not that it's not possible, it's that it's actually just cheaper because of human labor to do it that way. So the only thing that's really standing in the way of the automation is not the technology anymore. The technology is not the issue. It's the fact that the labor market's been driven to a point at which it actually has to be competitive with automation. And the only way for it to be competitive is to drive down the wages of the worker below and keep it there. This is stuff that these are little bugs up my ass, and I don't have a little man with a stick unclogging them so they back up in my brain. But You want to cue or intro or?
I'm gonna record an intro later. So
okay.
Just launch.
Well, I'm JP Sottile, and I am, I guess, ostensibly the News Vandal. And what is the News Vandal? The News Vandal, it's a website. I came up with it years ago, actually, when I was working in the mainstream media and I was writing surreptitiously. What I used to do is take news articles out of the Post or the Times or Wall Street Journal. I'd take them off the internet, and then I would vandalize them. I would go in between the lines and write what is actually being said, but not really being said by the reporting in the paragraphs. And that was the beginning of news vandalism. And then it turned into this idea of taking headlines and pasting them together so that you could take the stories that were being churned out by the news media, by journalism and newspapers and blogs and opinion sites and political magazines and everything. Just take their headlines and stitch them together so that they would tell what I call a meta story, a larger story. So when you get the rundown, a lot of people get the rundown, see it for the first time, and they go, oh man, I can't handle that. I mean, you want me to read 60 stories? You have 60 links here. And that's not the idea, and I've tried to explain it as much as I possibly can. Really, the idea is you just read the headlines in order, and that'll give you, you'll be better informed if you read the headlines in order from start to finish than almost anybody you see on television reading headlines to you. And, I don't change the headlines ever, and I have the naked URL below so you can see exactly the source, how they constructed the URL themselves, because sometimes the headline in the that's written into the URL is different than the headline they have online, and it's different than the headline that I use, because sometimes I'll get a headline, I'll pull it at 4:30 in the morning, and then by noon that headline's changed 2 times because they're going back and making adjustments based on the fact, often I think, that the headline that they had was not SEO optimized and it was not getting a lot of clicks, so sometimes they sex up the headline to attract more. But so that's that. So I worked for a news aggregation site that will remain nameless, and I had a kind of a falling out with them because of the way they were doing things. This was a decade ago, and that's when I decided to put out the News Vandal Rundown as a daily proposition. Well, 5 days a week, because I can't do it on the weekends. I have to have some time to unplug, because it's, when I was doing it during the Obama administration, I could churn out a rundown in the morning. I'd get up at 6, I'd have it out in maybe 2 hours, and then I could write. I was playing a lot of basketball. I was living a full life. And then Trump came down the escalator, and I haven't seen my life since.
It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York. And it's an honor to have everybody here. This is beyond anybody's expectations. There's been no crowd like this. And I can tell you, some of the candidates, they went in, they didn't know the air conditioner didn't work. They sweated like dogs. They didn't know the room was too big because they didn't have anybody there. How are they going to beat ISIS? I don't think it's going to happen.
When Trump came down the escalator, I'm talking, I'm mixing my stuff here. There's print and broadcast are different, but they're often intertwined as well. CNN was in deep trouble. MSNBC there was actually the industry talk about MSNBC was they were going to go through a wholesale format change. It looked like it was because MSNBC's average day rating was around 380,000 people. CNN was between 480 and 550. 480 and 550, that's 480,000, 550,000. And Fox was the big winner with about 1.1 million, and that was the peak with Bill O'Reilly sort of skewing the average day ratings. So that's less than 2 million people watching cable news. And when Trump came down the escalator, that all exploded. And the reason why MSNBC and CNN, there are political reasons why Fox would do it, but Fox was doing it for the same reason. Donald Trump's rallies 5 or 6 times a week, you just ran them live, you spiked your ratings. And what did you do? You spiked your profits. And so there's spiked profitability in that. And I think that created kind of a race to cover. Everybody wanted to get in. Everybody wanted to be a part. Everybody had a snarky take, and it happened in broadcast, happened in cable, and it happened online as well. And the zone got flooded with even more content because everybody was racing to get a piece of that Trump pie.
Yeah, and even bringing it back to COVID-19, that's like, that reminds me so much of the kind of chest beating, over, should we be running his coronavirus task force PR, every day? And it's like, you probably never should have been, but, it was just too tantalizing to be able to turn on the camera for 2 hours and get all that content or that, get those eyeballs on your network.
And it's not just get those eyeballs on your network. Then the rest of your evening is programmed for you. Your producers don't have to research anything, because all you have to do is go with your usual cast of characters, right? They're all scheduled, slotted to come on. Like if they're going to be the 4 people you've already slotted to come on and talk to Brian Williams with his end of the day wrap-up show. And what are you going to do? You're going to spend an hour poring over, rehashing, and vivisecting his performance in the presser. And so the news programming is programmed for you by him. It's like it's a turnkey operation. And Trump is he's so emblematic in so many ways. I feel like where we are with the intersection of politics and culture and social media is that we're trying to fill. This is going to look like, I don't mean to be a little philosophical here, but I think we're let me start this way. It'll be almost 3 summers ago this summer that the head of IKEA was at a conference talking about long-term business prospects, and he said, I think we've reached peak stuff. And when I heard that, I said, wow, that's amazing. I mean, whether or not he's right, that's an amazing idea to think of, that advanced consumer-driven capitalist cultures have gotten to a point of malaise because we've been oversaturated with plastic junk that we can buy very easily with other plastic junk, the other plastic junk being credit cards. And it feels like there's this crisis of meaning that we have tried to fill with consumption for a long, long time. And then social media came along and gave us the opportunity to fill that hole with micro-celebrity. And if there's an inherent sort of narcissism, and I admit, look, I'm on social media, I'm posting all day long, but I'm not posting pictures of the meals that I'm eating. I'm not posting pictures of myself or of my beautiful family or this incredible vacation I'm on, or look at how shiny my car is after I waxed it, and oh, by the way, did you see what model and make car I have? I'm not, but there's an inherent narcissism in what I'm doing, right? I'm collecting things and I've got to take on the news and I want you to see it and I'm posting it and hope you like it. So I'm not absolving myself of this, but there is such an inherent narcissism in the way that we're trying to attain some level of satisfaction to mitigate for the fact that the economics system and the socioeconomic system we found ourselves in is not generating the one return that everybody's looking for, which is satisfaction and happiness. And so we're filling it with this micro celebrity, and Donald Trump is just the macro version of this sort of self-obsessed, navel-gazing social media environment we found ourselves in. He's actually the avatar of it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the end of something. And I think that's part of what this podcast is, trying to put a finger on what that is. You have an interesting perspective because you're by far, out of everybody I know, the largest glutton for punishment, in the sense that you watch all the rallies, all the Trump rallies, you watch all the coronavirus briefings from beginning to end, and God bless you for it. I couldn't do it. Like, what's your kind of take on the Trump phenomenon, and as it's kind of like coming head to head with the pandemic phenomenon?
Well, I think this is actually the first time in a long time that his ability to self-destruct is not being actively interfered with by his opponents. That's one thing. I criticized impeachment as one of the great strategic blunders I've seen in my life politically. I mean, this puts Susan Estridge putting Mike Dukakis in a tank to drive around like a bobblehead. That puts that to shame, because that was a pretty big blunder. I think it's fascinating because it's basically just, here's the mic and just talk, and you get out of his way. And I think if he talks long enough, it goes from diminishing returns to actually him eroding his one thing that he wants, and that's his popularity more than anything. And I don't think that we've figured out what coronavirus, COVID-19 means yet. So that's going to play out. I mean, there are some culture war things coming up, but I think that those are ginned up for political purposes, obviously. And I don't, the poll that really registered with me last week was I think it was a USA Today poll, 8 of 10, I believe USA Today, but folks, I look at a lot of polls. I can dig it up because it was on the rundown. But 8 of 10 Americans supported the continuation of the lockdown. So that tells you that by and large, the mass of Americans in the aggregate, they feel like, okay, we're on board with doing this. We're not clamoring to go get our hair cut yet, to the point at which we want to risk our lives. But I think we're also getting to a point at which, okay, it's 55,000 deaths. It's going to be 65, maybe in a month, 65,000 deaths. And then you start going, okay, well, statistically speaking, the things that people were saying early on to open up the economy, those things may start to register a little bit as we start getting into June, and people start saying, well, deaths aren't spiking by 5,000 a day or even a week, and if they haven't spiked by 5,000 in a month, let's get back to our lives. But the question is, what lives are we getting back to? The lives in which you had a president who said this is the greatest economy in the history of mankind, but 46%, 47% of Americans couldn't pay a $400 surprise auto repair bill in a given month. One where record credit card debt keeps mounting every quarter, which is saying a lot because Americans went into record credit card debt in the months and years leading up to the 2018 crash, and they did a lot of record credit card debt at the end of the 90s before the tech crash. Are we just want to buy more? Do we just want more? Is that it? We just want more plastic stuff? We just want to keep replacing the plastic stuff that broke? Because this is kind of the 21st century, and there's no idea or vision of where mankind is going as a civilization, as species, or where even many individual nations are going, apart from those nations that are embracing this new form of right-wing populism, which, based on the thing that I did before I went into television, which was be a student of the history of fascism, I find really interesting, because those are the other echoes that I'm hearing and seeing, is that, for me, what fascism was more than anything, and there's the Marxist approach to fascism, and then I had my own way of looking at fascism, which was not to look solely at it from a materialistic, historical, Marxist analysis point of view. But I think that much of what fascism was trying to deal with was a crisis of meaning. And that crisis of meaning in the 1920s and 30s, after the Great War, the war to end all wars, the lost generation, and then the Great Depression that came after that, that was not just the United States, which was global, and the intensity of the Depression in in Germany was significant, where you needed 10 million Deutschmarks just to buy a loaf of bread, people with wheelbarrows full of Deutschmarks to go to the bakery with the inflation. That crisis of meaning, I think, is still going to be there, and in a way, Donald Trump was himself as a political phenomenon, a detour from or a distraction from the crisis of meaning that has been building within us over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, I think that's a really profound point. And then, not to get all Steve Bannon on you, but the fact of the matter is, like, our political lives have been dictated by pretty much the baby boomers, since, the Clinton era. And they can't lead much longer because they can't live much longer. What do you think is going to... so change has to happen. It's just mathematically, it has to happen at some point. And I don't know what we're looking to, who we're looking to as leaders, or who we're looking at for meaning, once this generation passes on. I'm
befuddled. I think probably I'm a Gen Xer, so I don't care if people know how old I am. I was born in 1969, and I was born about a month before Altamont, about 30 miles from Altamont. And I've always personally put that as part of my story, right? Is that I was born right basically on the eve of the Hells Angels beating the living hell out of the peace and love generation to kind of signal it's over, right? We got the pull cues. Peace and love is over. This is the end of the 60s. Some people say it's also the Manson thing is, an end point for the 60s, but they're both about the same time and both communicating kind of the same message in their own way. And so I'm right at that sort of early leading part of the Gen X movement, Gen X generation. That's the thing. I said movement. It's no movement.
No.
That's the problem. There is no movement. There is no Gen X movement, right?
Yeah.
We're latchkey kids, and we're sitting at home. And I love my generation, and I'm not ashamed of being a Gen Xer. But a couple of things strike me. When I look at a lot. You said I watched the rallies. I've looked at a lot of rallies, and I see a lot of my peers there.
Mm-hmm.
There are baby boomers there, but when I look at the age, because sometimes, it's hard for me to look at myself and say, oh, yeah, you're 50. And the people around you are 50. Those are your peers now, my friend. A lot of those people are 50. A lot of Gen Xers. And, we're not the woke, enlightened generation that Gen Z is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, one of the attractions to people like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Gen Z from some Gen Xers is that it's like we're saying, hey kids, we can't do it. we're immobilized. We're too busy collecting Mego dolls that we once owned when we were kids, and right. We're too busy geeking out on Star Wars and just being upset that Star Wars will never be as good as it was, because that was a child thing that you had in this. Star Wars came out in 1970 when I was like 9. Anyway, so. But we all obsess on our we're so nostalgic as Gen Xers, which I guess is also a little bit understandable, because one thing about Gen X is that we're the last generation to have any idea of what the American dream America actually was. We saw it. And a lot of us, most of us, saw it die before our eyes and saw it being taken out of our reach in real time. And this is something that maybe millennials get a hint of, but Gen Z has no idea of that America.
I'm 75, so I'm at the...
You're right in the middle.
Right. And, and I remember very clearly, the second grade or whatever, going to school, third grade, and, one day, none of the fathers had jobs, you know? And, it's like, you know, definitely have a vision of America that's owes something to the prosperity of the baby boom generation. And I always kind of saw the kind of slacker thing as like really a protective bubble. You know, it was just like I just read a book that Are You Serious, the co-founder of Mondo 2000, is just finished writing a book. Hopefully it comes out one of these days. And he talks about kind of like the missteps of the early cyber culture and, you know, in the 80s and the 90s. And, you know, at the time, I think magazines like Mondo and, there was only one Mondo. There was no magazines like it. But, you know, those thinkers were really kind of pushing like almost a crypto libertarian point of view. And I don't think it was because they were secret libertarians. I think it's because like it was the end of history and nobody saw like a vision for the future. Everybody was like more concerned with kind of analyzing the present and, you know, this like neoliberal consumer capitalism was what we're in. We're wallowing in it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to have to be the Generation Z who aren't stuck in this way of thinking, who can kind of envision something bolder and hopefully better.
Because in the 80s, you remember this, we were still worried about nuclear annihilation.
You know, like one of my earliest memories is like some teacher, I don't know why, she told a bunch of 7-year-olds this, but she said something about nuclear war. And like, I was like, for months, I was like, every night, it was like, I couldn't sleep, you know, I was freaked out. And, you know, and it was so real. I think they said 1985 was like the closest that that we came to war with Russia or Soviet Union. And, you know, people think about like ducking cover in the 50s and the 60s and stuff, but it was hot, you know, it was scary, and it was very real possibility right up to the end.
Right up to the end. I grew up in Livermore, which is home to Lawrence Livermore Nuclear Laboratory, one of the three, Oak Ridge and Sandia, it's actually a partner of Sandia, leading nuclear weapons research facilities in the world. That was right down the street.
Yeah, so that was like the local business, the local industry.
It was that and ranching and winemaking. So that's what Livermore was, a small town at. Now it's a gigantic bedroom community for Silicon Valley. All of the valley is now. When I grew up, it was a lot of farming and ranching. So it was a weird time, but to be like a anti-Reagan, new waver, punk kind of kid, nuclear war, that was kind of my milieu growing up in Livermore. So it was always ever present to me, and it was ever present in our community, let alone things like a famous, if you're listening to this, you haven't heard of it, look up a show called, a made-for-TV movie called The Day After. Highly controversial movie which envisioned a nuclear exchange with Russia and the literal fallout, biological human cost fallout of a nuclear war. I believe it aired on ABC, lots of fanfare, and it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
Hello, I'm John Cullum. In this evening's ABC theater presentation of The Day After, I play a father in a typical American family who experienced the catastrophic events of a full-scale nuclear war. Before the movie begins, we would like to caution parents about the graphic depiction of nuclear explosions and their devastating effects. The emotional impact of these scenes may be unusually disturbing, and we are therefore recommending that very young children not be permitted to watch.
You know, that also gave me nightmares as a child. And I looked it up a few years ago. I think I've just found it on YouTube. Somebody uploaded the whole thing, and I kind of watched it for like Kids Value or something. It is still frightening as hell. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. Well, luckily, and I say that somewhat ironically, or completely ironically, why modulate? No, I'm being ironic. 9/11 came along and gave us a momentary taste of what actual meaning might be, right? We all kind of, we're all in this together, and the world is all with us, and it all felt like, wow, we just realized what's important, our families and our loved ones, and the fact that it can be all taken away. And there was just a momentary feeling of wow, maybe we can like come together and be something, which is amazing, because the underlying acrimony that we think of as part of today's politics was really blossoming throughout that 90s too. That's another cartoon aspect where politics became a cartoon, driven by the Lewinsky thing and all of the Clinton scandals and the Clinton death list and all that stuff, the murder list, all the things that were going on in the 90s, the Scaife, Richard Mellon's Scaife and the American Spectator driving politics and all this kind of stuff. We had that going into 9/11. We had a president who was largely seen as illegitimate by half of the population, a guy who was being egged and had vegetables thrown at him during his post-inauguration walk from the Capitol to the White House.
I was there. It was so funny. It was like the limo was driving, down Pennsylvania Avenue, and then it hit like where all the viewers were. Right. And then like someone hit, they hit the gas, and then all of a sudden eggs flying out from all over the place. And then the skies opened up and it just drenched rain on everybody. I was like, this is going to be a rough 4 years.
Yeah.
Little did I know.
Little did you know. But that 9/11 kind of turned that off for a minute, because that's what the American people will do. When then something happens, they go, okay, you're the president. Trump actually experienced 2 weeks of that. And he's pissed that away just by running his mouth.
Yeah, he trumped it up.
But I hope that Gen Z has an answer for the crisis of meaning. Maybe it's something that's post-consumer capitalism. Look, we're always going to have some kind of, in our lifetimes, we're going to experience capitalism on some level. Entrepreneurialism, markets are going to be there. But modulating those and controlling those and directing those towards something that's not just purchasing for the sake of purchasing, in spite of reaching peak stuff, where the only thing that's really left for big corporations that are all giving, everybody's reporting their earnings this week. The market was up today. It's at 24,000. I'm telling you, the market is worth about 12 or 13, right? So I'm seeing 12,000 points of fat in the market. Netflix is not worth $1,100 a share. In what world? But the willing suspension of disbelief is itself this powerful indicator of the crisis of meaning that has us as a society in its grip, and we don't know how to slip out of it. If Gen Z can do it, more power to you, because I guarantee you, as you aptly put it, Gen X is most likely to spend the rest of its time trying to stay cocooned in a bubble.
Yeah. So let me ask you about the premise of, this show, Failed State Update. If we don't live in a failed state, it sure seems like it. Do you agree with that premise? Do you think that the United States is hollowed out? Or do you see a few more good years left?
I see a patchwork. I'm, I guess I'm biased. I was born in California, although I was at a couple days old taken to live in New Jersey for a while, but ended up back in California to live most of my life. And I'm pretty impressed with how California has handled it. Look at Mike DeWine in Ohio. Done a pretty good job. I think what's being hollowed out is the common good. The idea of the common good. And really, when we think of states and states that are succeeding and states that are failing, failed states have a number of different metrics to them, and things like, do services work? Is there functional rule of law? Is the court system working? All of those things. And so you can look at a lot of failed states. Libya, right? Failed state. At Yemen, failed state. But for us, I think the failed state moniker really has to do with our inability to participate in the common good. And, here in the Bay Area and in California, an idea of the common good was implemented, and people have participated in it, and it's been quite successful, actually. Look at the number of deaths in California. There are places where the common good doesn't really seem to register, right? Like Florida. And in the Trump White House is not based on an idea of the common good. As a matter of fact, the Trump White House is the culmination of a much longer project, of which the revolutionary fulcrum point was the Reagan election, the Reagan Revolution election of 1980. But it's really the long process of hard right conservative activists to undo the FDR version of America, the Keynesian economic version of America that FDR implemented with a social safety net and regular Keynesianism, not just military Keynesianism, where you had a system that put money in the hands of middle and working class people who would spend money and drive the market, as opposed to supply side economic, which is let's put all the money in the hands of the financial elites who may not be interested in building things or making things that people want to buy, but really just want to get involved in marginal Forex trading and just go out on the market and basically turn the economy into a digital transfer from one screen to another, where you're not really even making things because you're doing short selling on Brazilian oil futures, and whatever. So are we a failed state? Kinda. I mean, because without that idea of the common good in play, at the federal level, the federal government then just becomes kind of an afterthought. And I think that's actually, you mentioned Steve Bannon, that was part of Steve Bannon's war on the administrative state, which was what we want to do is we want to bust apart those lingering elements of the common good that are built into the regulatory processes that the bureaucracies engage in to try and modulate the greed and avarice that drives many of the aspects of the economy. Those are individualistic driven ventures, not common good driven ventures, and unleashing the ability of individuals to exploit systems without any check, balance, or punishment is kind of what rules supreme in the executive branch right now. So on that level, I would say yes, we are a failed state. But you know what? I drove to Livermore on a working road, and I didn't have a helicopter flying overhead that could kill me. I'm not in Somalia, where the United States just admitted, yeah, we did kill some civilians in that bombing, and even though we said we didn't. I mean, that's why I'm hesitant. I mean, I think my historical Gen Xer used to wear anti-Reagan T-shirts, punk new wave kid wants to say, yeah, this place is going to hell in a handbasket. But on some level, I think we overlook how fortunate we are that we are not as failed as we could be, and how much actually still does work, and how much opportunity there is to work with what we have.
And that's it, the second episode of the Failed State Update. I'm your host, Joseph L. Flatley. This episode was recorded on and around May 2nd, 2020. If you'd like to get in touch with me, either check out my website, lennyflatley.net, or hit me up through Twitter, @LennyFlatley.